How's it going, everybody? My name is LuckyBunz, and in today's video, I'm going to be going over the Team GO Rocket Takeover in Pokemon Go, or the Taken Treasures event, however you want to call it. So in this video, we're going to be talking about Shadow Kyogre, Shadow Ho-Oh, basically everything you need to know for this event, and even onward. There's going to be a lot that's packed in here, so timestamps are going to be linked down below. Alright, so this event is going to take place on January 27th to February 1st, from 12 AM to 11:59 PM local time. And like usual, the bonuses are going to be that you guys can TM frustration on your Shadow Pokemon using Charged TMs. Now, the best way to get Charged TMs in-game is currently through Go Battle League. The Win 2 reward, you actually have a chance of getting a Charged TM that way, and it's not that difficult to hit, especially if you guys have been using the tanking strategy. And the other way is by beating Mega Raids and 3-star raids, because Charged TMs are going to be a guaranteed drop. Now, you're also going to have increased Team GO Rocket grunts at Pokestops and from balloons during the event as well. Next up, let's talk about the timed research, or should I say the paid time research. This has kind of been an ongoing thing now in Pokemon Go. We've actually had 9 paid timed research just this month alone. But yeah, anyways, the paid timed research is going to cost you $5, and you're going to get an exclusive post from it, which I actually think is kind of cool. But I would essentially just go into this thinking that you're just going to be paying for the pose, and everything else is kind of a bonus, because it's not really that much else. You're going to get some basic rewards and encounters, plus an incense and an incubator, regular incubator, not super incubator. So I don't know, like if it were me and I was a pay-to-play player, I probably wouldn't even buy this unless I just really wanted the pose. But yeah, this is pretty much the new model moving forward. And again, if you don't really care that much for these, just ignore them. I pretty much ignore them every single event, and I still have a lot of fun. So yeah, just ignore it. It's not that big of a deal, but I know some people like to make it seem like it's way worse than it actually is. Next up, let's talk about the Shadow Pokemon that are going to be coming into the game. So we got a few exciting new ones. So Corphish, which evolves into Crawdaunt, Snorunt, which has a split evolution into Frostlass and Glalie. Frostlass is ideally going to be the one you want to focus on, because this Pokemon is most likely just going to be relevant for PvP. We also have Chimchar, which evolves into Infernape in its final evolution, Piplup, which evolves into Empoleon in its final evolution, Croagunk, which evolves into Toxicroak, kind of a PvP favorite right there, so definitely expect some play in PvP with that one. Dweeble, which evolves into Crustle. This one does have some play in special cups, so definitely expect some play for the Shadow variant as well. And then finally, Ferroseed, which evolves into Ferrothorn. Regular Ferrothorn has a lot of play in the Great League, and it also has some pretty good play in the Ultra League, so once again, the Shadow variant should have some exciting play in the PvP metas. Now, like I mentioned, some of these Pokemon are going to shake up the meta quite a bit in PvP, and we even have some contenders for better rankings in PvE as well, raid/gym meta. That being said though, when we compare Shadow Empoleon and Shadow Infernape, even with their exclusive Calm Day movesets, they don't really rank super well in the overall Fire type and Water type metas respectively, so I wouldn't really focus on giving those two elite Charged TMs unless you just really like them and they're personally one of your favorites. On that note though, I do want to mention that my updated list for the top best Pokemon in the game, top Shadow best Pokemon in the game, those are going to be coming out soon. I know some of you guys have been asking me about them recently, and I have been working on them. Those should be coming out towards the end of January, early February. Now, like usual, the Team GO Rocket leaders are most likely going to be switching rotations as well, so I'm going to pin the comment down below of which those are going to be. Usually when they announce these, they don't actually post those, so we're going to have to wait until the event actually starts in about a week and a half from now. Now, currently we do have Shadow Dratini, Shadow Sableye, and Shadow Bellsprout available from the Team GO Rocket leaders. Shadow Bellsprout isn't really anything crazy. Like, you can get Bellsprout from the decoy grunts already, so if you want to hunt it that way, that's fine, and I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. Shadow Dratini and Shadow Sableye, though, we don't know if those Pokemon are going to go into the regular rotations afterwards. They were in regular rotations afterwards, but again, I can't really say for sure. Shadow Dratini, when evolved into Shadow Dragonite, is actually good in the Ultra League and the Master League, not to mention in the raid/gym meta, so that one specifically is really good to focus on if you guys want to get that Shadow Shiny. Shadow Sableye, when purified, is actually really good in the Great League as well, so both of those Pokemon are top picks, and if you guys haven't got the Shadow Shiny versions of them, and if not just the Shadow Shiny versions, just regular versions with really good IV spreads, is definitely something I would focus on before this new rotation comes into play. Next up, let's talk about the 12-kilometer eggs. Nothing is really changing in this, but we are going to get one new Pokemon added into the 12-kilometer egg pool. That is going to be Varoom from the Paldea region. Now, how good this Pokemon is going to be in PvP, it's really hard to say, but it's not going to be that good in the raid/gym meta when it does evolve, so, you know, don't worry too much about that. Its main relevance is going to be PvP, if anything. Next up, let's talk about Shadow raids. So in 1-star raids, we're going to have Shadow Alolan Sandshrew, Shadow Murkrow, Shadow Pineco, and Shadow Croagunk. Once again, Shadow Croagunk is going to be a new Shadow Pokemon, and Shadow Murkrow and Shadow Pineco are both going to have their shiny forms available. Next up in 3-star raids, we're going to have Shadow Scyther, Shadow Skarmory, and Shadow Golett. Now, Shadow Skarmory is pretty good in the Open Great League, but unfortunately, because this is from raid battles, you won't be able to get a good IV spread for the Great League, so I would just ignore it. Shadow Scyther does have its shiny form available, so there is some appeal there. Now, with that being said, we can move on over to the 5-star raid boss, which is going to be Shadow Ho-Oh, which is only going to be available for 1 weekend. You're pretty much going to have the entire weekend to raid this. It's going to start being available on the 27th at 6 AM, and then it's going to end on the 28th at 10 PM local time. So yeah, a lot of opportunity right there, but at the same time, not that much opportunity, because 2 days on the weekend, yeah. Would have been nice if we had like a whole month of this, but it is what it is, right? Now, of course, we have to talk about the overall meta relevance of this Pokemon, but spoiler warning, it's looking pretty good in both a Shadow form as well as a Purified form, and it's rare that I do say that. The last Pokemon that we talked about that was this good was Shadow Mewtwo, so buckle up, we have a lot to go over. So we're going to start off talking about Shadow Ho-Oh in PvP, and again, this is going to overlap into the raid/gym meta section as well, so if you guys aren't that into PvP, just hear me out on this one. So in the Open Master League, regular Ho-Oh with Sacred Fire ranks as number 6 in the overall meta, and Shadow Ho-Oh ranks as number 12. Both variants are some of the best you can have right now in this current meta. Now, given that purifying a Shadow Pokemon will boost the IVs by +2 across the board, this makes raiding Shadow Ho-Oh that much more optimal if you're trying to build one for the Master League. The IV floor when raiding Shadow Ho-Oh is going to be at 6 to begin with, so if you're able to get an IV spread that is at least 13, 13, 13 across the board, you can pretty much purify it to get the hundo, which in this case is absolutely worth it given its current ranking. And the only thing that you're going to have to need ready for it is an Elite Charge TM to get Sacred Fire. And once again, given its overall meta relevance, I can say that it's easily going to be worth the investment if you are able to get the hundo, or potentially even a 98 with 15 attack. Now, unfortunately, the biggest downside to raiding Shadow Ho-Oh this weekend is going to be that these raids can only be done in person, and depending on where you live, the weather conditions right now might not be optimal to actually go outside and do raids, or even just drive around and do raids. It's just really unfortunate because this is definitely one of those weekends where a lot of players would go out to raid it if they could, and, you know, just being able to raid at least a few from your home would have been nice, just having that option. You know, remote raid passes are still hella expensive. I don't personally recommend using them, but I know for some people, like, that is the only alternative because they can't actually go outside right now. Next up, let's talk about Shadow Ho-Oh in the overall raid/gym meta, and unfortunately, I can't recommend this Pokemon as much, but let me explain why. So for starters, we've previously had Shadow Apex Ho-Oh before in the game, which is a much better variant of this Pokemon because it has an improved version of Sacred Fire. This was a reward from the Johto Tour event special research, I believe, so it's unlikely that we're going to see it again, but there is a possibility that it may come back at some point. We never really know with Niantic. Now, I know some of you guys out there purified this version of Shadow Ho-Oh, and I know what you're thinking, like, oh my god, I probably messed that up really bad, right? Well, yes, but also no, and the reason I say that is because that purified version has an even better version of Sacred Fire, which essentially ranks it as good as a regular Shadow Ho-Oh. So it's not a terrible scenario, like it's one of the few cases where if you purified it, you didn't actually screw up that bad. Like it's still definitely usable, depending on the IV spread, it might even be usable in the Master League. Because in Master League, it doesn't actually, you know, use the improved version of Sacred Fire, it treats it as the normal version of Sacred Fire, same thing with the Shadow Apex version. It treats it as the normal version, so it's not like a game changer, like it doesn't really matter. The only difference is in the raid/gym meta in terms of it being better. That being said though, Shadow Apex Ho-Oh is still going to be the best version of Ho-Oh all around for the raid/gym meta. And another reason that I can't recommend Shadow Ho-Oh just by itself, not Shadow Apex Ho-Oh, is because of its overall ranking in the fire type meta. Like it actually puts it below a lot of other options. For example, Shadow Entei, Blaziken, Moltres, and Charizard are all going to be better Shadow forms compared to Shadow Ho-Oh. Not Shadow Apex Ho-Oh. Shadow Apex Ho-Oh is actually better than most of them, but it's still below Shadow Entei, I believe. Now that being said though, regular Reshiram with the legacy move Fusion Flare non-Shadow outranks every Pokemon I just mentioned. So, you know guys, it doesn't really matter if you didn't get any of these Shadow forms, it's okay, because if you got Reshiram and you want to give it an Elite TM to get Fusion Flare, you already have the best fire type attacker in the game, non-Shadow, non-Mega. So basically when we look at Shadow Ho-Oh, it's going to cost you more Stardust, you're not going to get nearly as much mileage out of it, not to mention if you purify it, it's going to be a cheaper investment and it actually ranks better in the Master League. So basically the overlap here from the PvP analysis that we just did is that if you get a really good Shadow Ho-Oh with at least 13, 13, 13 across the board or higher, purify that bad boy, get it to the hundo, and now you're going to have an amazing Ho-Oh that you can use for the Master League, and you could also use it in the raid/gym meta, but I would mainly just use it in the Master League because it is a total beast right now. Because when it really comes down to it, Reshiram with Fusion Flare is going to be the optimal fire type attacker in the game. Like anytime that Pokemon comes into rotation, I always recommend rating it strongly, and we just had it in rotation like last month, so hopefully some of you guys were able to get it. I don't believe it had Fusion Flare though, so you're most likely going to have to use an Elite Charge TM if you want to get Fusion Flare on a good IV spread, but it's totally worth it in my opinion. So we spent a lot of time talking about Shadow Ho-Oh, and if you guys have any additional questions regarding it, let me know in the comment section down below. But now let's move on over to Shadow Kyogre, which is going to be available from Giovanni's Special Research, or should I say the Special Research for the Timeless Travels, which is actually a seasonal Special Research. So unlike the past few Special Research for Shadow Legendary Pokemon, Kyogre is going to be available from the Seasonal Research, which is very similar to Shadow Lugia that we got a couple years ago. So what this essentially means is that we're not really going to be using the stackable Super Rocket Radar methods that I've talked about in previous Team GO Rocket Takeover videos, but we are going to be using some other methods depending on what you guys currently have stacked, so make sure that you listen carefully to this section of the video. So depending on which method you guys used in the past, you have a couple of options. If you use the noob stacking method, then you're on page 1 of your previous research, and you essentially don't even need to touch that one. Just leave it alone, complete the Timeless Travel Special Research, and obtain Shadow Kyogre once you get towards the end. I don't believe the Timeless Travel Special Research is going to expire at the end of this season, but there is usually a special reward that you're going to get by completing it on time. So again, I would recommend getting your Kyogre, not to mention Kyogre is a super good Pokemon, which we'll talk about later on in this video. But yeah, make sure that you just complete that one and you should be good to go. Now what if you've actually been using the old method though? So I know a lot of you guys actually commented on my last Team GO Rocket Takeover video, so I know this part of the video is going to be relevant to many of you and possibly even new players who are just watching this video for the first time. So basically, you have been waiting on the second to last page of your previous Special Research, right? The part where you're going to have to battle Giovanni. You already got the Super Rocket Radar, but you just haven't battled Giovanni yet, because once you beat him, then you're going to complete that Special Research, but you want to do that when the right Shadow Legendary is going to be in rotation. In this case, that is going to be Shadow Kyogre. So this could be the previous rotation Special Research or an even older one, depending on what you guys have. I'm going to explain everything first, but if you guys still have additional questions, just comment them down below. Basically, what you want to do here is stay on that page of your Special Research, whatever old one that you guys currently have where you need to beat Giovanni, and then from here, complete the Timeless Travels Research, get to the page where you have to beat Giovanni now, and if done correctly, when you beat Giovanni, you're going to complete both quests at the same time, and you're going to bank the radar from your old Special Research. And now moving forward from here, you guys can actually go ahead and use the new method, which again I've talked about in previous videos. I'm going to link those in the description down below. Check them out if you want a more detailed explanation on how to use the new method. I've already explained this many times in the past, but again, if you guys have any additional questions, just let me know in the comment section down below, but watch those videos first, see my explanations on them, and then if you still have questions, come and comment them down below. But again, guys, I will do my best to, further answer your questions or further explain how to do these methods, or, what you should probably do moving forward, because every single time a Team GO Rocket Takeover event comes out, I get loads of questions about this stuff, and I'm always happy to answer them. Now, personally, if you guys have been stacking your Super Rocket Radars, you're probably asking yourself this question as well: should I use my Super Rocket Radars now to get Shadow Kyogre? Now, personally, I'm not in a rush to actually do this, and I'm going to explain why. So, Shadow Kyogre is probably going to get a raid rotation at some point, right? We're kind of starting to see this trend. And when that happens, the shiny is most likely going to be enabled for it. And that is when I want to start hunting this Pokemon hard. As of right now, Shadow Kyogre is currently shiny locked from Giovanni, so we're not going to be able to get the shiny Shadow Kyogre potentially, which again, I feel like if you're saving your Super Rocket Radars, you optimally want to use them when you have a chance to get a Shadow shiny, which I think at some point in the future that will eventually happen with Giovanni, because we do get him rotating some of the same Pokemon over time. But again, I can't say for sure if that will or if it won't happen. You're taking a gamble, but in my opinion, it's a calculated risk kind of gamble. Either way, we should talk about the overall relevance for Shadow Kyogre, so if you guys have been keeping up with my videos for a while, this one is going to be an easy answer here, but either way, let's take a look at how Shadow Kyogre ranks in the overall raid/gym meta. So for comparison, regular Kyogre with Origin Pulse was already the best non-mega, non-shadow water type attacker in the game. The next in line would be Shadow Swampert with Hydro Cannon, and the next non-shadow option would be Greninja with Hydro Cannon. Now Shadow Kyogre with Origin Pulse ranks 7 ER points higher than regular Kyogre with Origin Pulse, which is actually massive. Now this does still put Shadow Kyogre 9 points below Primal Kyogre with Origin Pulse, but that is to be expected. Primal Kyogre is going to be the best water type attacker in the game for pretty much forever at this point. I don't think that's going to change in the next 5 years. I could be wrong about that, but I'm going to hold true to that opinion because I don't think there's anything better than Primal Kyogre with Origin Pulse. Now once again, this analysis was done specifically with Origin Pulse, so if you guys decide not to Elite TM it, or maybe you just don't have any Elite TMs on you to get Origin Pulse on your Shadow Kyogre, Surf would be the next best option, and it's actually a few points lower, but it's still extremely good. So if you guys, again, don't have any Elite TMs to use, I would go with that moveset, Waterfall plus Surf, or Waterfall plus Origin Pulse if you have the Elite TMs. Basically though, this thing is an absolute unit, and if you guys did want to use your Super Rocket Radars on this just to have some really good water type attackers, regardless if you're not going to get the shiny, it would be a great investment for your water type team. Once again, I don't see this thing being replaced anytime soon. This is probably the pinnacle of Shadow water type attackers moving forward. Now finally, let's talk about Shadow Kyogre in PvP, but unfortunately I won't be able to do a full analysis on Shadow Kyogre because there are just too many variables in place. I'm sure some more skilled PvP analysts could figure it out though. I just don't have the experience to piece everything together, and I'm not going to pretend like I totally can. If we take a look at regular Kyogre in PvP though, specifically the Master League, it does rank at number 27 in the overall meta, and this would be the main place of relevance currently. Like, this could change depending on how the meta shifts, this always happens, but usually the Shadow variants aren't too far off from their regular counterparts, so it could be ranked a little bit better or sometimes a little bit worse. Only time will tell once people actually start running it though in the Master League. That being said though, we covered a lot in this video, so as always, if you guys have any questions about anything that I talked about, please feel free to comment them down below. I'll respond to them as soon as I can. But if you're still looking for some more content, I'm going to recommend these two videos right here. And before you go, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you all real soon in the next one.